Hi, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and I'm going to be speaking to you today on this video on 8 ingredients for saving and rebuilding your marriage. Almost everyone who has come to therapy to me throughout my 27 years as a counselor, they come, almost all of them, because of pain due to a relationship. Very few people just come in and say, I want to dig into my own stuff just because I want to grow as a person. That really doesn't happen much. So they come with one goal and one goal alone, and that is their relationship has become unworkable and it's become very painful, and at least one of the two in the couple are thinking about calling it quits. Many times the therapist's office is the last-ditch stop just before the attorney's office. And what's funny is a lot of times it's a last-ditch effort for people who really don't believe in therapy whatsoever. Many years ago, I had to do an alcohol assessment for a fellow in jail. And I went before the judge, and the judge said, asked me if this fellow was sincere in his desire to recovery. And I said, Your Honor, it's my experience that there are no atheists in foxholes. so all of a sudden, this fellow in jail had the belief that in the healing power of alcohol recovery, and many times people who would otherwise not have visited a therapist, all of a sudden, just because it's all that's left to them, they're on their way to the therapy office they're just sort of hoping for a miracle. So here are the 8 ingredients, and they're really not in any particular order of importance. The first one is, the first thing you need is some really startling insights from an excellent marital therapist. I mean, if you were a doctor, you wouldn't perform surgery upon yourself. I hope you wouldn't. There's an old saying that an attorney who represents himself has a fool for a client. Most of us don't go out and overhaul the engines in our cars. We seek help from experts, and I would heartily recommend that you do that in your marriage. People think that being in love and being married isn't in the same category as those other disciplines, the law, medicine, and being a mechanic. Because everybody gets married, almost. Everybody falls in love. Everybody gets in a relationship. But you will need expert feedback and advice and direction and knowledge that you can gain, and it will be priceless. I can't tell you how many times people have come into my office, and in one single session they have changed how they thought about their relationship for the better, and the whole tone between them went from being adversarial and combative to being compassionate and empathetic. One session. Now, it doesn't always happen that way. Let me tell you one story. I had a couple come in early one morning, and she had already made an appointment to see an attorney, and she was ready to kill her husband. She thought she was married to a really nice, upstanding, moral fellow, and found out he was actually broadcasting sexual things he was doing over the internet. And she was mortified and humiliated and just bitter and angry. And within 10 minutes, the whole tone of their relationship had changed. The tone in the room had changed from venom and hatred to support and friendship. And all I said was, You marry your issues, you marry the right person, you unconsciously are drawn to somebody that you can react your family of origin issues with. Bam! Just this quick. She just changed. And she says, I get it. Because it turns out that her father had been a horrible sexual addict who had spent time in jail for sexual crimes. And she had buried all that stuff and didn't want to deal with it, but then was unconsciously drawn to pick her husband, who was a hidden sexual addict. And they used the pain from that experience as a springboard to do excellent work. They both healed wounds from their childhood, and they reinvented and re-engineered themselves from the ground up and re-engineered their marriage. Now they're very happily married and doing great. But if they wouldn't have had that session that morning, I'm pretty sure they'd be divorced. So it can make all the difference in the world. The second ingredient needed for saving and rebuilding your marriage, and this one is, I think, the most important, even more important than good feedback from a therapist, and that is brokenness, humility, sincerity, and deep remorse. You take a couple where they both have that, and you go to a really average therapist, and they're going to make some progress. But if you take somebody who's arrogant and stubborn and deceitful and unrepentant, and you put them with the best therapists in the world 3 times a week, they'll make no progress. Recovery in therapy is a matter of the heart. And the deeper you go into humility and brokenness, the better off that you're going to be. Something really magical happens. Let's say in a man's case, if he's sincerely humble, broken, sincere, and remorseful, and he psychologically sort of gets on his knees and empathizes deeply with his wife, that's magic, and it will melt the heart of a very bitter and a very alienated wife. However, if a fellow doesn't have those qualities, but he has a lot of knowledge about therapy, there'll be huge blocks of ice that keep him from gaining access to the wounded little girl at the heart of his wife. The third quality needed to save and rebuild your marriage is time and patience. A lot of times men want results. They want quick results. They want useful tools. They're willing to do homework if they get the payoff quickly, and they want a guarantee of how quickly it's going to take. And I give them none of those things. I tell them, you're in the wrong place, pal. Because the problem isn't your marriage. The problem is 2 dysfunctional, broken people. The purpose of marriage is to make you friggin' miserable. I'm being serious. You probably didn't hear that at the wedding ceremony, but we unconsciously are attracted to people who are well equipped to hurt us and not meet our needs, so that we can feel a lot of pain and experience brokenness and end up in therapy where we can fix ourselves. So the real problem is 2 people don't have the emotional health to maintain a relationship over a long period of time. So what we have to do, we do have to reinvent and re-engineer 2 individuals from the ground up. And how hard does that sound? How quick does that sound? So when we were fragile, defenseless little kids, we were wet cement. But now as adults, we're far from wet cement. We're hardened. We're stubborn. We're know-it-all. We're blocked off, and we're protecting that wounded little kid that's at our heart. So that's what marriage is about. It's about being a wrecking ball to rip through that concrete and expose what's behind it. So The fourth ingredient for saving your marriage is community. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to help a man or a woman re-engineer and reinvent themselves from the ground up, to be in recovery. So in our case, that community is group therapy. So when you come to, and it sounds weird, but it is rockin' cool, let me tell you. It's people just like you who are going through stuff just like you, who are well educated and funny and vulnerable, who will give you encouragement and insight. You'll have a room of safe people, and you'll laugh a lot, you'll cry a lot, you'll learn a lot, and slowly over time it will change you. It's a little awkward the first night, but trust me, group work is very inexpensive and it's very cool, and it will help you save your marriage big time. The fifth thing is insight from reading. Not just reading, watching videos, listening to books on your iPod, anything where you ingest information, whether your issues are about abandonment or shame or addiction or codependency or counterdependency or rage. Doesn't really matter what your issues are. The more you learn about it, again, granted, if you have that humble, remorseful heart, it will make it will accelerate. You want to accelerate things? Get busy learning and having insight and understanding who you are and where you came from. The sixth quality necessary is courage. In our culture, we generally don't embrace our pain. We medicate it. There's a pill for everything, every pain known to mankind. In one of my groups, the men's group this week, I had a sort of a semi-broken fellow. You know, he's more unbroken than he is broken. Observing a guy who's just doing tremendous work. He's very broken and humble and sincere and remorseful. And the unbroken fellow asked me, what's going to become of him? And I said, well, he's going to be happily married. And, you know, he's going to be dogged by his psychological demons from his childhood, but I see a bright future for this man. And whereas with you, the jury's still out, because you're tearful and broken at the prospect of possibly losing the relationship, but other than that, you're pretty happy with your know-it-allness and your being in your head and your lack of emotion. So there'll need to be some additional brokenness brought to bear, and that means embracing and cooperating with the pain you have instead of covering it over and numbing it. The seventh quality is having urgency, motivation, willingness to invest time and money and energy that it will take to repair your marriage. If most of us put resources toward maintaining our cars and maintaining our homes, the way we maintain our marriages, we'd be parked on the side of the road and our houses would be falling down around us. I have a 22-year-old son at IU, and I switched him cars because he's going on spring break, and I'm driving his car, and he's a busy fellow, and he doesn't really, on the way home the windshield wiper fell off because it was just dangling. So you need to maintain things, and one of the dearest and the most important things that I would encourage you to maintain would be your marriage. Because if you don't, it can fall apart, sometimes surprisingly quick and surprisingly dramatically and painfully. So the last thing you'll need to save your marriage is the will to not quit when it gets hard, because it will get hard. You'll need a great deal of stubbornness and stick-to-itiveness if you're going to be walking on the beach with the wife of your youth when you're 75 years old. So marriages really are priceless. They're the heart and soul of a family. And that is sacred. But your marriage can be saved if you and your spouse have enough of these 8 ingredients for saving and rebuilding your marriage. So I want to encourage you to get to work on yourself right away. If your spouse isn't ready, it doesn't matter, because if you work on you, you'll find out that your work will spill over on them and can create tremendous growth in them as well. So again, I'm Mark Smith, Family Tree Counseling Associates. My phone number is 317-507-8866. And I wish you the very best in your work at saving and rebuilding your marriage. Thank you.